I crashed first. So you wouldn't have thought that I dealt well with pressure. I was deep in alcohol addiction, depression, suicidal ideation. Like the whole picture was one of not being able to handle the pressure. But for me, I guess I was there for as long as I could stomach it. And I felt like I had a crossroads. So the pressure, sometimes I think if it leads you to those really dark places, it forces something else to emerge. And so I weirdly feel blessed that I got to that extreme, because then I was like, oh, what do other people do in pressure? And how did they actually thrive from probably worse adversities than I did? And that's where I started observing the skill and going, okay, let me experiment with the skill of managing pressure in a useful way.
This is Better Under Pressure with me, Sara Milne Rowe, the podcast where successful people share what they do to thrive under pressure. When I ask most guests on Better Under Pressure when they first experience pressure, they normally say it was from either parents or school in exams or on sports day. But when you're born into a notorious cult, where you're raised knowing the world is ending and that you are one of God's end-time soldiers, pressure's on a whole other level. Petra Velzeboer managed to escape from the cult in her early 20s and started a family and working, only to find the latter not too dissimilar to those original pressures of the cult, which is why, to use her phrase, she crashed. So it's no wonder that when she managed to very consciously and with determination extract herself from the second cycle, Petra became a psychotherapist and champion of mental health support with her organisation PVL, combating psychologically toxic cultures and promoting mentally healthy work environments. Petra, hello. I'm really excited to have you on today. Our orbits have crossed in various different forms in conferences and speaking events, but this is a really lovely opportunity to dig in a little bit to some of the stuff that you and I both care about, I know.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Me too. So let's start, Petra, with the question of, what is your relationship with pressure?
This is an interesting word. And as I was sort of reflecting on this conversation, I was like, pressure, do I use that word in my vocabulary? And I probably don't use it that much. But interesting, the phrasing of, what's my relationship to it? So I had a quick definition of pressure Google, just to be like, what angle can I take? And of course, there's two things. There's the one that I think we're focusing on today, which is the pressure that creates diamonds, right? So, managing stress, these sorts of things. So it was continuous force was one of them. And then the other one was the use of persuasion and coercion, which is relevant because I was born and raised in a religious cult. So the way of pressure is I was like, ooh, both of those feel somewhat true. And of course, in the world of work and the digital world, pressure is coming from this kind of influence as well as maybe stress or maybe those ways of thinking about it. I don't know if I'm curveballing your whole show, but what do you think about the other angle on pressure?
No, I absolutely think, I have quite a strong and positive relationship with pressure, but that's really what caused me to create this is to understand when it becomes, as you say, into stress or healthy stress versus distress,
yeah.
Right? And I think playing with the idea of pressure so that it actually allows you to become more of who you are is what excites me. So this bit that you've added in today about the sort of the sort of influence and it feels like a contraction of a lot of stuff. I think, therefore, what I'm interested in is how is it that people choose in that state, particularly, and you've just written a book about digital well-being, which I know is absolutely true and key to the work that you do. But with all of this increasing stuff coming in, which you could identify as pressure, how do we lead ourselves with this increasing amount of stuff coming in? I suppose that's what it brought up.
Yeah, and just like what you're doing here is bringing the conversation to light. So the first step is always awareness. What is this type of pressure? And it could be pressure to behave in a certain way or to achieve things that society wants you to achieve. And we all know the statistics around happiness. You make the more money or you achieve that thing and you're just thinking about the next thing. So there's this idea of self-awareness and where am I trying to get to? What brings me joy? What lights me up? And certainly pressure, as far as my relationship to it, it's that intensity of pushing to achieve potential that I think is the beautiful part of it. And I certainly probably orchestrate pressure in my life. I probably put myself in uncomfortable situations to feel that squeeze in order to see if I can thrive or if I'll fall apart. And over time, it stacks, doesn't it?
Yes.
So it's the building of the skill of managing pressure so that you can handle more things, I guess.
Do you think, so I'm interested in that, the skill of managing pressure. Presumably your background gave you that skill. Am I right?
Well, I think in hindsight, it probably did give me loads of resilience. But at the same time, there's lots of people from my generation who grew up the same way, who have taken their lives, who are deep in mental health issues. So I don't think it's a given. I think it is an opportunity if you're able to look at it and shift the perspective from being one of a victim of circumstance into something that can empower you. But certainly when I left, I crashed first. So you wouldn't have thought that I dealt well with pressure. I was deep in alcohol addiction, depression, suicidal ideation. Like the whole picture was one of not being able to handle the pressure. But for me, I guess I was there for as long as I could stomach it. And I felt like I had a crossroads. So the pressure, sometimes I think if it leads you to those really dark places, it forces something else to emerge. And so I weirdly feel blessed that I got to that extreme, because then I was like, oh, what do other people do in pressure? And how did they actually thrive from probably worse adversities than I did? And that's where I started observing the skill and going, okay, let me experiment with the skill of managing pressure in a useful way.
Okay. Can you remember a moment, Petra, when you were deep in the darkness and, as you've just said, some of your colleagues or friends went deeper into the darkness and unfortunately, took their life. But can you remember the moment when you decided to experiment because you, if I'm hearing you correctly, you saw something or you experienced or you had enough sight to see that somebody else could deal with it? What can you go to that moment?
There was a moment, but it wasn't like a light switch moment. People think like you have the moment and then like, but it wasn't clear. It was more, but it was definitive. And it was definitive because I remember waking up one day, staring at the ceiling. So I was in bed. I have two young kids downstairs. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. And I'm staring at the ceiling and I'm thinking, I cannot do another day like this. And so I had this very clear, like, I either have to end it. And again, this is not advice. I am a psychotherapist and a mental health expert, but this was just like the moment, right? And I thought, okay, so either this is it, because this is not tenable. I cannot continue like this. Or I made this weird deal with myself. And the deal was that I would give myself 1 year to experiment with all of the things. And in that year, I sort of had a weird exit strategy. So I was like, if it doesn't work, I'm out. Right. And so, that year came and went. And I often talk on stage about how life wasn't perfect afterwards. But I began to realize that if you did the things before you felt like it, that slowly it stacked. And then you started to feel greater confidence, connection, whatever it might be. And the first step for me was recovery groups and quitting drinking, because that was my biggest depressant and keeping me stuck. And that set me on the path in a way.
So doing the things, that was one of the things.
That was one of the things. And people think again that, we just start feeling better. No, you don't. Anyone who's first gone to recovery rooms knows that when you stop drinking, when you stop whatever your numbing mechanism is, and my book on digital well-being is we're all numbing, avoiding, not facing certain things because it's easier to just look down or to swipe or shop or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Actually, it feels harder at first because suddenly you're like, oh, it's like you have no skin. You're feeling everything, right?
Yes.
So and then you have to sit with your accountability. What are the things you've done that you can no longer blame the past for? That's a tough pill to swallow at times.
Yeah.
And then experimenting. I mean, we kind of know the stuff, right? People are talking. I mean, influencers are there all the time saying these are the healthy things, even though it's overwhelming in a way because people are feeling like, oh, if I can't do an ice bath and meditate and do all this stuff before 7 a.m., like I'm a loser, right? Yeah. And so I just want to swipe that slate clean and ask people to experiment with what works for their body and where they're at in life.
Yeah. Yeah, I really am a believer in the experimentation. It's almost like the 100% experimentation as well, isn't it? It's not just playing. It's like I am going all into this experiment. I love the fact that you gave yourself almost a timeline as well. Because these are sort of little handrails, aren't they? It feels to me that you can give yourself the container in which you're going to experiment. So in a year's time, what happened? Where did you get to in a year?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wasn't sorted, but I felt like I had hope. And this is one of the most powerful human emotions, right? So when you feel like you have hope and you start building a little bit of evidence that you can do different things, right? That evidence over time gives you the courage to do the next thing, because you're like, hey, that last time I was just as scared and it was fine, or I learned from it and I can continue to do those things. I mean, I started studying, I got sober, I started talking and being honest. And this is one of the things people don't necessarily put in the list of well-being tools, honesty. Yeah. I know we talk about authenticity, but it's a little bit like marketing speak these days.
I agree. I totally agree.
Rather than what is my actual truth. And for me, it was, sink or swim. My truth and honesty literally was going to keep me sober and alive. So that means, people tell me, you're so brave, you say all the things. And I'm like, no, I'm just here making sure I don't die. And I'm here for my kids. You know what I mean? It seems brave, but it's actually like, this is what I need in order to be my best self and continue to move forward.
Yes. You and I were at, Courageous Leaders this week, and you'd left by this time, but there was a question around resilience. And what you've just described there to me is better under pressure. It's like, okay, I'm going to get whatever the pressure is. I believe I can be better through it, but it takes effort. It takes intentional behavior. And that's what you've just illustrated and what you've said. Like you, I mean, I'm just talking about teenagers at the moment. I mean, we do a lot of work with schools. There's like a pandemic of mental health going on right now. And the question that came from the audience was, what has happened to resilience? What would you say to that, Petra?
The way the word resilience is used, I'm not really sure everyone gets it these days. It's often weaponized in workplaces, and the structure puts immense pressure in a negative, toxic way on people, and then says, just boost your resilience, like it's a you problem, when actually systemically, with the digital landscape and the work landscape, there's so many things that are affecting people. We've been through a pandemic, there's unrest, geopolitical issues. If anything, we're extremely resilient. Right. And so our baseline just might be that we're dealing with more things. So I'm a little bit careful of using the word like you should be more resilient. Right. As if we're not all coping with a ridiculous amount of stuff, much of which people don't even know about. Like we don't know what other people are dealing with. However, resilience is the thing about continuing to show up in some way, regardless of what pressures, negative ones, are going on around us. But it doesn't always look like the guy at the top of the mountain. You know what I mean? These images of resilience, winning the race, like that's an end game. That's like those moments, the Pursuit of Happiness movie, where it's like that last minute. But all the rest of it was pressure and tough, and he thought he was going to lose, and these sorts of things. What I have done is a reframe that when tough times happen now, I'm able to think in the moment, I wonder what this is preparing me for. I wonder what this is teaching me. That doesn't mean it's easy, or I'm like, I wonder what this is teaching me. It could be like, the grief and the struggle and and I feel it everywhere, Yeah. People forget that feeling things is part of building resilience. Because actually when we suppress, when we block, when we act as if everything is okay, that's when it pops up later as burnout, mental health issues, physical health issues, all these sorts of things. So I don't know if I'm answering the question, but it starts with self-awareness. What do I need? And then what can I reframe? What's the story I'm telling myself about this hardship in order to move me to a continued resilient place? Yeah. Right? It stacks. It's not just one or the other.
Yeah. I really like the term stack, the stacking because it is the stacking that gives you the capability. And as you said, the benefit, you feel the benefit. You can feel that something is progressing, however small it is, but it's enough to then think, okay, I can continue and I have more agency than I believe in this situation. Yeah, that phrase of what can I learn? My equivalent of that is, what's the nugget of gold in this pile of? Right. It's like there's something in there. If I can just search for it and find out what it is, as opposed to being overwhelmed by the pile.
And I might, sometimes the pursuit of finding the nugget can be exhausting.
Yes.
Because there's almost this kind of like stress on like, find it. If you find it, then you won't be feeling this pain. It's almost an avoidance as well. And so I love it. And I would hold it lightly and be like, it's going to emerge when I'm ready, you know? And it's okay to feel emotions. Like, we think that strength looks like just being positive all the time or good, when actually strength can be like in the struggle, still getting up to go for that walk, call the friend, do the basic stuff. Sometimes that's the most resilient that a person can be. And that's beautiful.
Yeah. What would you say has been the worst pressure? Was that the moment you spoke on earlier?
It's funny because it doesn't feel like pressure. Like, I grew up thinking the world was going to end. We were being raised to be soldiers, to save the world. Like, I mean, like, if you talk to other people, they're like, that's crazy. But for me, that was just like, oh, that's childhood. You know what I mean? I will say that and then, you know, even getting sober didn't feel like pressure. It felt like desperation. It felt like I am now repeating the cycle generationally to my own kids. And if I don't stop it, you know, we know where the path is going to go. But the first real orchestrated pressure for myself was, I'm raising 2 kids. I'm working full time. I didn't go to school when I was younger. First time I sat in front of a classroom was at the age of 25. And I did a master's degree at night. And so as much as people are like, well-being's like bubble baths and light a candle, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes the best thing you can do is invest in yourself and create the accountability for the future you and for the sake of your children. So for those 2 years when I was studying at night, I used to wake up at 3 a.m. to do my writing, to write my dissertation before my kids got up. Not every night, not every morning, but in the sort of deadlines, right? I was working an hour and a half away from my house as well. I was studying at Birkbeck in London at night. I was tired, you know, but I was holding on to this. I used to visualize walking across the stage, getting my degree over and over and over. I pictured the cap and the gown, you know, I was the first person in my family to be getting an education to this standard. And I wasn't the perfect parent. You know, stress did come out in ways that weren't necessarily healthy. Now, this isn't sustainable for life. No. But my God, I'm glad I sat with the pressure for those 2 years in order to get to the next level of credibility and opportunity. So, I mean, if I remember pressure the most acutely, it was those 2 years.
Yeah. And in that story, I hear a lot of positive pressure, actually.
Sure. It was your choice.
Yeah, exactly. It was your choice. And you put some visualization around it that turned it into. So whenever, I mean, I think it's really interesting, this dance we play between this pressure is overcoming me. So it's turning into negative pressure or distress versus the practice. You and I believe so much in the practice. What's the practice to go from that moment to tip it into something that is actually useful?
And, you know, there's got to be an element of trust, whatever language you want to use, that the unknown, right? You're betting on yourself. You're betting on something, right? And and sometimes the pressure doesn't lead to the visualized outcome, right? Or that end result. But sometimes it leads to better places, right? So it's like holding the destination kind of loosely, but using those tools of visualize. The way I visualize is I really picture how I'm going to feel in that moment. Who's going to be around me? Like, what's going to be the experience of it? And I didn't know there were all these like science tactics around that back then. I was just like, I was just surviving. I was like, if I can do it, then this is what it's going to look like, you know?
So interesting you say that, because I was having this conversation with someone only this week around recognizing that I think that's what I did a long time ago without actually being able to put any words around it. As a teacher in very challenging comprehensives, my lesson planning was literally visualizing the worst potential children in the class and imagining them as I was writing or planning the lesson. I was like in the classroom with them. And if it felt, and your distinction of putting it onto a feeling, I think is really important here, actually, because if it felt as I was creating it, oh, that's okay. I can see them engaging in that. I can, oh yeah, okay. And I'm okay. And actually the rest of the class is okay. Right. That was how I planned lessons, which is, and you know, at my age, I'm realizing that about something that was happening like over, 20 odd years ago. It's like a long time.
Well, it's our survival impulse, right? It's like, how do we project, how it's most likely going to work so that we can, survive, I guess, to use that terminology in the situation. Yes. But yeah, it's interesting how it's all now a framework and a science and neuroscience.
I know. It's so interesting, isn't it? I think that's a really useful point we're touching on now, is when it all becomes into everyone's saying the same thing about you do it this way, you do it that way. And actually, what you're bringing up and helping me reflect on in this moment is how much intelligence there is internally if we were to actually give it space to breathe.
So much. And in a world of our tech distractions and all those sorts of things, it's like we've forgotten how to listen to our own body. Yes. So we're Googling or we're YouTubing or TikToking, like 3-step plan to being healthy. And then there's 8 million of them to sort of run through, all with a slightly different nuance, but the similar principles. And we're forgetting that, like, depending on what age you are, what gender you are, what your responsibilities are, there might be slightly different things that you need during that stage. Yeah. And so being able to turn within and go, in this stage of my life, these are the things that will most allow me to perform at my best, feel joy, do the things that matter to me, which is personal, right? Yeah. But it's like, it's the reflection point that it's always information and noise going on, and we forget to listen to ourselves. Yeah.
And forget to give space to ourselves actually at all, like dominated by the incessant pull of distraction. So we're talking about the skill of managing pressure. I love this because getting better at anything requires a skill. Petra mentioned that her choices were different from those of many of her friends who were brought up in the same cult. And this is so important. Same experiences, but different choices, leading her to build different skills. Sometimes we can get caught in the unhelpful trap of feeling that pressure descends on us and that there's nothing we can do about it. I hear this from clients, and I too can find myself getting caught up in the same trap. We inadvertently lose our sense of agency and so become a victim of circumstance. As I reflect on the skill of managing pressure, 3 questions help me. So I offer them here for you to think about. 1. What phase of life am I in? Because our lives move through distinct phases, and what worked brilliantly in one phase may be less effective in the next one. Or a new phase will offer more space than, say, the 1 or 10 years earlier. Take a moment to consider what strategies or habits might be outdated in your current phase of life. For example, the workout routine that used to energise you 5 years ago, or the leadership style that inspired your team last year, but this year, Practices evolve as we evolve through different phases. What needs refreshing or updating as your circumstances evolve? Last week I was working with a client who described to me a very high-pressured scenario that his business was facing. What baffled him, or actually irritated him, if I'm frank, was the fact that certain members of his team, to his mind, were responding too slowly. Now, his previous approach that had consistently and effectively worked for him to get a team into fast action was simply not having the same impact with this team. He was in a new job with a new team. He needed a new approach. The second question is, what's worth experimenting with? I really want to highlight the power of setting timelines when developing a new skill. Petra mentioned that she made a deal with herself. She gave herself a year to experiment and started to feel that doing something, before she felt like it, by the way, allowed her to experience small pieces of evidence of progress, which also built in her courage and her motivation to keep going. On the subject of timelines, I find it useful to remember the bigger the overwhelm, the shorter the time horizon. If the pressure feels very big, it's worth asking yourself, what can I do in the next hour or before lunch? And the last question is, what's my choice of attitude? We can all choose to back ourselves, whatever the pressure. It's possible to build belief, build a skill that helps you believe that you can do something different, despite the pressure. Betting on yourself and believing in the end result, give yourself the belief that you can do it. All of that is a choice and it's a practice. The skill might be simply noticing what you're saying to yourself. Ask yourself, what's the most useful story I can tell myself in this situation? Petra asks herself, I wonder, what can I learn from this? What is this teaching me? What is this for? There's something beautifully experimental about the word wonder. It feels light, imbued with curiosity. Try to deliberately recall any stories you already have that suggest that you can handle pressure, even when it's overwhelming. The way to build belief is through experimentation, through small, intentional shifts. So to recap, when the pressure feels too much, pause and ask yourself these 3 questions. 1. What's now out of date? Which old approaches or habits aren't serving me now? 2. What experiment can you focus on now that will strengthen your belief in your ability to handle this pressure? And 3, what small shift in attitude can you implement today to deal with the pressure in a way that feels positive?
What do you see, Petra, in the world of work that you orbit in as creating the most unhelpful pressure, not healthy pressure, but unhealthy pressure for people, would you say?
Well, there's a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's this push to put people in a mold. So that's that other kind of pressure about influence kind of pressure. It's like you must play by these rules and play this game in order to achieve this thing. But as we've been discussing at Courageous Leaders, there's that generational nuance, right? And it's like actually the younger generation are going, I don't want to. Why do we do it that way, right? Has anyone questioned this? Must it always be this way? We now have technology. I also find it very interesting that we're supposed to be in the most efficient, time of our lives because of technology. And yet workload is cited as one of the biggest challenges on any kind of well-being survey in the workplace. And that's because people are in meetings all bloody day. Yeah. They're constantly in meetings. They're not very efficient. They're in these engagements that are not nourishing their soul or their creativity. And then they've got to do all their work after hours. So it's not making it more efficient. It's actually making it less efficient for many of us because we haven't evolved our working practices to allow this to enable us more focus and creativity. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest superpower of the future is focus.
I agree.
Right? And so what are the ways that we create boundaries and conversations in the workplace? So not just individually. We need both. We need personal boundaries and we need collective accountability when it comes to how we do some of these things. And then, I could talk all day about the toxic practices of, if people are in fear, if they're fear for their jobs, fear for being blamed or shamed or all of these things, you're in a state of fight or flight. And you talk a lot about this. You're not going to be in a place for creative leadership, innovation, all the things that will give you an edge in this kind of rapid pace of AI change. So we're missing a few tricks, but we need the open conversations.
Yeah. How do you keep steady yourself?
It's knowing my own warning signs because, I run a business. I've got 2 adult children. I live in London. There's lots of things going on. There's loads of pressures. So knowing my warning signs, which can be if I'm a bit more irritable and if I'm turning to like emotional eating, like, oh, let me just grab the sugar or whatever to sort of perk me up. If I kind of notice those signs, I'm like, ooh, okay, I need an early night. Meditation for me. So I experience PTSD. And of course, we've talked about addiction. So for me, when I can meditate and, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And doing it in 10, 15 minutes in a way, often not guided, because I'm like, stop talking. Can we just all shut up for a minute?
I'm so the same.
Stop telling me what to do. Shut up. It allows me just to like connect with my body. I quite like journaling. It's a good way for me to, and it's just messy. I don't follow any kind of structure or anything. And then working out. So these are the things that help me. But like any of us, it goes like this, right?
Yeah.
And then you think you're in perfect balance, and then life punches you in the face because something happens, and you have to, not always in a perfect way, sort of reel from it, come back, and then decide. I feel like there's consistent decisions about who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? What matters to me? We've got to keep reminding ourselves of them and being aware to the impact that we have around us.
Yeah. Yeah, I really endorse your point about early signs. I think I'm very aware of what mine are, and I think when I
what are yours?
People, mine are my tonsils actually. I mean, like actually, it's probably gone beyond. It's probably gone slightly too far by the time I'm feeling my tonsils, but the very significant sign for me is my tonsils. And needing no noise is the other sign. Like I really related when I guided meditations. It's just another input. So feeling like it could be a walk. I need to be free of noise. That's when I know I need to honor that, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. And movement, like, I mean, it goes back to shed basics in a way, whatever shed basics mean to people. And again, I watch people put that into a formula as well. And it's about just the simple basic things that might be 8 hours sleep for me, 6 hours sleep, early rise, late rise. It's like my daughter goes to bed very late. She's not a morning person. I'm a morning person. Like, we're all different. So again, giving ourselves a break around this experimentation and knowing that what used to work for me even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, actually, Petra, probably is not as useful as it is now, right?
So people don't realize that they can evolve their practices to match where they're at, and that this is a consistent evolution rather than something that's fixed, because there's a frustration, isn't there? It's like, well, I'm doing the things that I used to do. Yeah. And it doesn't feel like it's working.
Yes.
And you're just like, all right, well, let's hold on a minute. I bet your work's different. Your responsibilities are different. Maybe you're in different support networks or partnership or single, or, the whole context might be different. Yeah. And so that means the balance might need to just readjust.
I totally agree. The other thing that I'm intrigued about and hits a lot of the work that we do is leaders that maybe have worked out their own strategy for now, in terms of managing pressure in a way that feels healthy and invigorating and enlivening and all of that. But there might be one or two people in their team or around them that have a much, they might use the word shorter fuse, or are not able to deal with it, or they pop earlier. And I'm curious to know what you would say to a leader who is grappling with that. Like, how do you support others when their capacity maybe for positive pressure is lower than yours?
Well, first I might challenge that. I feel like that might be an assumption about that it's lower than yours. It's just showing up differently. So I like the picture of the iceberg, where at the top we see the pressure that we're all facing, and it looks like equal. We've all got the same little mountain on top of the water. That's the pressure. But underneath, we might have very different icebergs. Yeah, to keep going with the story. And so who knows if that person's just had a bereavement or gone through a divorce, or is whatever. Maybe they're male and they're not allowed to have any outlets, and that's what their conditioning was. There might be a gazillion things going on. So as a leader, I would be brave in how curious I am, and move from the assumption that, hey, your fuse is lower. We can acknowledge and we can say, hey, I'm noticing that your fuse seems to be a little bit shorter. I know we're dealing with this big pressured environment. I wonder what else might be going on for you. Like, is there other things that it would be useful for me to be aware of so that we can work together to get this shared outcome? Because of course, work is about a shared outcome. And then I would say, is the goal clear? Do people know what they're doing? Are the tasks clear? Like, there's the tactical things about workload and how we're balancing some of this. But with my team, and they'll do it with me as well. It goes both ways. They're like, Petra, you're a little bit like irritable, like what's going on? And I'm like, oh my God, you're right. I just had an argument with a friend and it's really affecting me, or I didn't sleep that well last night. And I realize I'm a little bit off my game. Like, so that's the leading by example. It's not always getting the pressure right, but it's acknowledging that peak performance, which is what we want, right? Takes these other things in order to sustain it. Yeah. So I just like normalizing the conversations about performance, wellness, what's going on in our lives that could be triggering or could affect us in our connections. And I mean, we ask all the questions in my workplace. Yeah. We're pretty bold and we know all the things about everybody. So the more you know about someone, it's also, you're not starting from zero. Yeah. You know a bit about the iceberg already. Yeah. So you might be able to more specifically say, hey, you know, how's your mom doing? Yeah. Is she still out of hospital? Like, what's going on? I just want to check in. So when we lean in from a place of curiosity and kindness, the defensiveness, which would happen if I said, hey, why is your fuse so short, man? Yeah. Like, where's your resilience? Yeah. I get defensive and sort of try and defend my corner, when actually if I come from this place of connection, then that person can meet me there.
Yeah. And I think the pressure that the sort of speed, not the pressure, but well, it might turn up as pressure, but the description of people's days where there is no space, and what COVID has produced is that there's no commuting on the whole anymore. So people are literally on and on and on and on. It's like it almost, what I'm witnessing is the idea of like spending time on human connection, spending time on just asking some very simple human asks of people, or genuine human inquiry, feels like I haven't got time for that.
The other day, I was getting a coffee from Pret, and I try and do this in my day, and I'm just using this as an example. I try and speak to people where the stakes are lower. The stakes are lower, right? And she had a beautiful name badge, and it was a name I didn't recognize I didn't know where it was from. And I just said, oh, hey, how's your morning going? I said, well, how do you say your name? And I repeated it back to her, and I said, where are you from? And she was from Ukraine. And so we had a little chat, you know. And she got coffee, and like, then she was smiling. And as I got coffee from someone else, she was like, thank you, have a good day, you know? Yeah. And so it's such a simple, silly thing, but those are the ways that you inoculate yourself from the fear, right? Of like, is someone going to think I'm stupid? I mean, I'm in London, people don't talk to each other, right? And so little things like that make you realize like, oh, I'm fine. In fact, I might even feel a bit uplifted. Right. And so now it's going to be easier for me when I go into the workplace to have a like, hey, how's your kid doing? I know they had GCSEs recently, or whatever it might be. Yeah. So, and then I always say, move away from the how are you? Get away. Like, I know might have good intentions, but how are you? I'm fine. It's just the way. Or how are you? I'm busy is the new I'm fine. And people do the weekend, the weather and sports, right? And so can you be more creative? Just get more creative than the weekend, the weather and sports. Or if you're going to go there, make sure it's a bridge to like a deeper place. I could talk about this all day.
No, ditto. So do you feel you've got sufficient healthy pressure, enlivening, invigorating, stretching in a good way pressure in your life right now, Petra?
Yes. And probably I do I like the pressure. And so sometimes I'm like, ooh, this is fun. And I sign up to all the things. And then now I've got to deliver on all the things. And then I'm like, ooh, you know, and I have a bit of that kind of shortness of breath feeling. But yes, I'm running a business. My second book has just come out. Yeah. I've got 2 kids transitioning to university and kind of managing that piece. And then I've been studying again as well. So just because I like to expand my brain from the algorithms that are fed to me, you know, so I want to go a bit left field and talk to people and read books that I wouldn't normally maybe gravitate towards out of habit. Yeah. So yeah, plenty of pressure, but it is the enlivening kind. It's the like, oh my God, I get to do these things.
Yes, exactly.
Not the like, oh my God, I have to do this stuff.
Yeah.
There's a key difference from times in the past.
Yes. Brilliant. So, Petra, if you were to pass two things, I mean, you've said many beautiful things in this conversation, but if you were to pass two things forward to anyone listening to this podcast thinking, I really do want to manage pressure better than I am currently, what two would you hold and take forward?
I think the first one is the self-awareness. So knowing that toxic stress or the pressure to conform can be tragic for your physical health and your mental health. We don't often connect those dots, right? We just think, oh, I'm busy and this is how it is, until life punches us in the face and we can't move. We have a physical health issue, a mental health issue. So really understand what type of pressure you are experiencing, right? And if there are types of pressure that are like, ooh, that's the stuff that's going to make me sick, I've got to kind of manage that in some way. And then just
on that one, it makes me. I last spoke to someone on the podcast called Claire Danson, and she, I mean, you talk about life punching you in the face. You know, she was on her bike training for a very big professional triathlon and hit a tractor, and basically she's paralyzed now from her chest down, and she's an inspiration actually to listen to. But one of the things that she says is very similar to this is recognize a me pressure versus a should or somebody else's pressure.
Nice.
And know how to identify that. So it really resonated when you were saying that.
All pressure is not the same. It's not equal.
No.
And because that then brings you to agency, and having autonomy is good for your mental health, right?
Yes.
Just have agency. Like I described the pressure of doing a master's degree. I chose that pressure.
Yeah.
That was very different than being in a cult where pressure was given to me.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Really key difference. I'm glad you kind of added that in there.
Yeah.
And then I think have a vision for your life. And I'm stealing that from Arnold Schwarzenegger, actually. But it could be know your why if you don't like him. Yeah. Whatever the phrasing is that works for you. It's like, is this pressure helping me on the road to whatever that vision is? And I don't mean an exact, like, you know, some people are like, what's your earning potential? What's your this real facts? It's more like you and my view of like, how do I want to feel? Who do I want to be connected to? What purpose or mission am I serving? So things like that, right? And so you can have that sense check about like, is this pressure moving me in that direction, building my skills and my capability? Or is it squashing me from being myself, right? And disabling me from that vision for my life. But it takes the reflection time, zoom out, you know, belief, what's possible. And it starts really small. Like for me, my first beliefs were just for today, I'm going to go to sleep sober. That was the vision for my life. That was it. You know what I mean? Tonight I will go, that's all I can handle. Right. And over time, it's like, ooh, I might publish a second book. Ooh, you know, like, and then it kind of grows because you've stacked evidence that when we do these things, that the pressure's good for you. So now I've got something to work with. That's the kind of fuel. Yeah, those are broadly the two.
Thank you. And in there is this, it's really pertinent right now, actually, because I'm having a few conversations with people who are very, very well into their career. Mm-hmm. But actually, that question buried in what you were just saying, actually not buried, very illuminated, is almost the be. Who do I want to be? You know, and I know it's a very, again, another, you know, TikTok phrase, be or do, you know, but it's a hard question sometimes in the way that we're living to actually give enough reflection and space to understand who you want to be. And it may be different from how you were 10 years ago. It may, you're obviously the same person. It's not like you're not, but there's the evolution that we've talked about all the way through this conversation. The evolution of the be question is a big question. And I love it because the potential is all there if you choose to explore it.
Can I add? It can be big and it can be micro. I was thinking when I got divorced several years ago, and so was in a different kind of pressure which was change and, all the things. And I was living with my ex for like 6 months, before we could manage the house and the kids and all the things. And I remember in the morning, as part of my morning routine, I would write down 2 questions. One was, what was I grateful for? Because I had to keep that sense check. And one was, write down 3 things that you want to be today.
Yeah.
So I kept it real micro, because I was like, I wanted to hold the vision of like co-parenting and these things in the future. And I wanted to know that all I had control over was my own behavior and how I interacted.
Yeah.
So the integrity that I had. So that meant even if my ex was angry, all the things, let's not tell his story. I was responsible for those 3 things that I'd written down: patient, clear, kind, things like this. And then, yes, it's the big things as well, but everything can be a tiny practical step.
I totally agree.
Well, it's a big vision.
Well, it's back to your Pret example versus saying it to your team, isn't it? It's like, what's the little practice that I can do that feels incredibly accessible and within my gift now?
Yeah.
But it's actually invigorating a muscle that is super helpful as I go further. So, yeah,
it's
the micro and the macro.
Bravery muscle that you can repeat every day. And if you think of an athlete, they're not running a big race every day, right? But they're putting some training in that nobody else is seeing, just their coach or whoever, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. It's how do you train the muscle? So now I've got a big meeting and a big restructure. Have I been training it? Do you have my people seen it? Have I built trust? Then that stuff becomes difficult, but pretty simple to execute.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so much of it is common sense, but not very common.
Because it's simple, but not easy. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Petra, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I'd love to talk to you more.
Of course. Thanks so much for inviting me and spending time with me.
I want to leave this episode by wholeheartedly reinforcing Petra's point about the importance of focus. In a world where distraction is rampant, strengthening our ability to focus, protecting our attention, and being intentional about where we place it is a superpower worth honing. It's this practice that allows us to choose, use, and improve the skills we need to help us thrive in moments of pressure. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Better Under Pressure with me, Sara Milne Rowe. If you enjoyed it, please do subscribe and let us know what you found useful or what you'd like to know more about. And don't forget, if you'd like to sign up for our fortnightly Pressure Points newsletter, where I summarise key points from each conversation, you can find a link at saramilnerowe.com. If you're interested in any of the practices mentioned, check out my book, The Shed Method. Alternatively, you can find us at Coaching Impact or me on LinkedIn and Instagram. Better Under Pressure was produced by the fab team at Smart Cookie Media. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, goodbye.